All right, this is Joellen Schaefer, and we're here from the Utah State Board of Education, and this is our Assessment Director's webinar today. So with me right now I have Julie Quinn, and I also have Jared Wright. And so we're going to go through a few slides with you today. Let's see, how do I click? Some new accountability. We're going to talk about the ACT online and the ACT testing dates, WIDA online ordering and training dates, the SAGE, the Desmos calculator. Julie's going to go through that with you, the SAGE training dates, UTIP sync, Apple, and our principals training. Okay. So recently, as we've been considering, as the board has been considering changes to assessment and changes to accountability moving forward, we have a plan, and we wanted to make sure that all of the assessment directors had access to this plan. Curriculum directors will also get this information shared with them. Special ed folks, we want this to go broad and wide. And we've also been talking to stakeholders throughout the state. So USBE has a strategic plan, and Julie, how come I keep getting that click, 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 click? Is there? Yeah, I'm not sure. I think every time someone joins us, I'm getting a little beep. So anyway, I apologize for being distracted by that. So with this strategic plan, we're thinking about college and career readiness by 2022. So the state is going to have some specific goals for students by the time they graduate from high school. We also have accountability, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in just a minute, but as you know now, we have 3 or 4 different accountability systems. We have federal accountability, state accountability, we have the governor's PACE plan, we have alternate accountability. So what the idea here is that we'd like to work with the legislature to bring together all of these different accountability plans into one new accountability plan, and hopefully not have 6 out of 6 years in which accountability gets changed. So that would be the plan going forward. Of course, that would mean some different assessments, and how does that connect to our standards? So we're going to talk just a little bit about that, and really having schools think about the goals and accountability to inform their school improvement plans. So I'm just going to lay it out here for you, and Julie, if you'll stop me when we've got questions, I'll be happy to stop and answer any questions. Okay. So for the Utah State Board strategic plan, we really are thinking about excellence for each student. So the foundation of the public education system is to provide an opportunity for educational excellence for each Utah student. So this requires advocacy, focus, and prioritization of effort. So first of all, one of the first imperatives of the strategic plan is providing transparency in the public educational system with evidence-based data. So the things that we're thinking about with our data are who to measure, what to measure, why to measure, and how to measure. And with those things in mind, what are the state, what do we collect at the state? What do we collect in UTREX that we can actually measure that might inform schools around success for students in their schools? So this is our current thinking. This is not set in stone by any stretch of the imagination, but it's what, based on preliminary data and impact data that we've run, what would post K12 success look like? So we right now have an 84% graduation rate. We'd like to set that goal at 90%. We'd like to see all high schools have a 90% graduation rate. We want to increase success on our statewide assessments. We haven't actually quantified that yet. We're looking at a lot of different pieces of data, but that would be a metric that would be really important to us. We'd like to increase the number of students earning an 18 on the ACT composite. And right now, 62% of our juniors receive an 18 or above. So we really want more access to ACT and more students at least meeting that minimum composite score that it would take to get into a state university. So that is an 18. That's thinking about it a little bit differently than we have thought about meeting all 4 college and career ready benchmarks. But that's kind of the direction that we're headed. We also want to increase thinking about what's happening for CTE and increase the pathway completers and the concentrators. Right now we're at 58% of high school students that follow one of those CTE paths, and we want to make sure that we have lots of kids having access to those and being successful in those. And again, increased access to AP and CT and CE offerings. We started some of this data collection, as you remember, with the PACE, the governor's PACE program. So it's continuing to look at those course taking patterns, who's taking what, and making sure that all kids have access. So currently right now we have 35% of our 14, 15 kids that were ready, according to these metrics, for the post K12 Success. So we really want to increase that to 45% by 2022. So these are some minimum success criteria as a state that we are looking at. And these are some, so if we want to get there, where do we start? What are our benchmarks along the way? What kinds of metrics are going to inform that post K12 success? So for elementary, some possible indicators would be that literacy performance in grades 1 through 3, SAGE math proficiency in grade 4, looking at chronic absenteeism, and then one of the ones that was mentioned was keyboard proficiency in grade 5. That's quite a predictor of future success in middle school. Now for our middle grades, we're thinking about SAGE math proficiency in grade 8, SAGE literacy in grade 8, again chronic absenteeism. So absenteeism is a pretty solid indicator at the elementary and the middle school level because we have some better definitions for what absence actually means at those levels. But what we don't have, I'm going to go back here just a minute, is a very good indicator at high school attendance. So that's one thing that I think the state is looking at and working at, is thinking about how we collect that attendance data. High school, we're looking at graduation. We're looking at success on a statewide assessment, again, the ACT of 18, and access and success in those advanced courses, AP, IB, CE, CTE, and then, of course, grade sufficient in grade, or credit sufficient in grade 9, and then the GPA in both of those. So we know that GPA has some issues around it and some of those credits moving forward, so we'll have to be really careful how that gets operationalized. But these are the benchmark indicators that we're thinking about for students having that post K12 success in college and career by 2022. I'm going to pause there for just a minute, Julie, and see if you have any questions that people have that they need to be answering.
There's one question.
Oh, okay.
How do we know keyboard proficiency is an indicator of success?
You know, there's actually I don't know. So how's that for an answer? We have some folks here that have done some research on this, and so there's some new research coming out saying that keyboard proficiency is highly indicative of success in middle and high school. There'd be some equity issues perhaps around that, but also I'm still not sure that this is going to remain on there, as if it may or may not be high leverage enough, and so I think some of this is still open for interpretation. That's why the big possible up there. If you have some suggestions, or if you have things that you would like to, and I'm going to give you a couple of different ways to give feedback on some of these. So for these benchmarks in college and career, you can give that feedback around our state plan and our state goals to me. And then for accountability, I think this plan is what that I'll share in a few minutes. In an overarching way is going to be presented with the legislature, and some of your input would be helpful to be sent back to the legislature at this point. So that's what I know about that so far. Any other questions?
Under the new benchmarks, will 9th grade still be in middle and high school 10, 12?
You know, that's to be determined. We know we have lots and lots of different configurations of schools, right? So in the past, we've always had 3 through 8 and then 9 through 12. But looking at the benchmarks, we may be able to do several different kinds of configurations for that benchmark reporting. I imagine that accountability, the state accountability, which I'll begin to talk about in a few minutes, will still be in that same configuration of grades 3 through 8 and then 9 through 12. All right, so with this proposed legislation, we have some changes coming down the pike for assessment, and this is where I think all of you will be really interested. The recommendations are the first step in a collaborative process between the legislature and other stakeholders to consider changes to the state's assessment and accountability system. So any changes that take place in assessment will have to be changed by statute and through a legislative session. So as you all know, the legislative session doesn't start until January, it doesn't end until March, and then the board has 120 days to make rules. For that reason, this spring, we will have the same SAGE assessment that we have always had. Nothing is going to change for this spring. We're set in stone. So that's math, science, ELA, including the 2 writing prompts at all grades, except for those that have opted out of the 11th grade. And I put some approximate testing times up here. We will also participate, as we have since 2011, in the ACT statewide test in 11th grade, okay? There will not be writing offered on the state day. We tried to work this out, and it just didn't become possible. We don't have a mechanism to collect kids' money if they wanted to take the writing optionally. ACT didn't have a way to do it that would only give certain kids the test. So even though we work diligently to try to include writing as an option, we will not be including that this spring, okay? Now, in the spring of 2018, things change a little bit. We will only be offering SAGE summative in grades 3 through 8, math, science, and ELA. You'll have 1 writing prompt, and that writing prompt will be just like the prompts we have now. It'll be 60 to 90 minutes, but there'll only be 1 prompt, and it'll be offered in all grades 3 through 8. The testing time is going to be reduced a little bit because you're going to only have 1 writing prompt. Now, what the trade-off is, though, that you're going to administer ACT Aspire in 9th grade and ACT Aspire in 10th grade. These are not adaptive tests. They're fixed form, multiple choice tests. They have English, math, reading, science, and writing. So those will be the tests that will be the summative tests given in 2018. Then the ACT 11th grade statewide test is exactly the same, but now from 18 onward we'll be offering the writing, or the writing not just offered, the writing will be part of the ACT statewide test. In 2019, at the end of 2018, the SAGE contract with our current vendor will end. And so we will have in the spring of 2019, the new CAT, meaning Computer Adaptive Summative Assessment, could be called SAGE. By then people may think there might be something else we call it, then it might be still SAGE. It will be a little bit shorter test, so that the tests won't be quite as long. And what we're trading off for that is that you won't get a lot of detailed, deep information like you do now, like with the item reporting categories and such. But what you will get instead is benchmark and interim and other sorts of testing modules with that will be used for instructional purposes. So for accountability only, those tests will be shortened. And again, you can see these approximate total times. It depends. We're in the process right now of an RFP and looking at our different options. So all of this is what we anticipate, but not necessarily something that you can bank on for sure. Okay, so ACT Aspire again in 9th grade, ACT Aspire in 10th grade, and again the ACT statewide test in 11th grade. So this is the plan, and looking forward down the road of our timelines about what the assessment's going to look like over the next couple of years. So are there any questions on that? I've spent a lot of time on it.
Just some PowerPoints we need to get people on the list, but
Well, now we sent this PowerPoint out just before
Yep.
just before we started today. So if you're having trouble seeing the PowerPoint, email Emily. Emily Sweeten.
yeah, email Emily.
So say that again.
No, it's okay. We'll
Okay, we'll go back at the end. Okay.
So there's a question, will ACT Aspire be administered in one sitting?
You know, that's a really super great question, and we just got the answer to that question today. So the ACT Aspire can be delivered either in one marathon setting. Marathon may not be the right word.
No.
Or you can break it up with the different assessments. It is a timed test, so those tests are anywhere between 40 and 60 minutes. Those are hard stops on those tests. But you can, over the month, the ACT Aspire does have a longer window. It has a whole month of the window, and you can create your testing schedule much like you did in secondaries for the SAGE secondary tests. And we've just started delving into all of these nuances about the ACT Aspire, and as we get more information about the ACT Aspire, we will pass that information along to our LEAs for sure. Any other questions?
Not yet.
Okay, great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about accountability. So accountability has three purposes. So the first purpose is we want to celebrate excellence and growth of schools by identifying those schools that are meeting or achieving established levels of student performance. The second purpose of accountability is to provide supports for schools that are not, because we want to make sure that all schools are effective and improve student performance. And then the third purpose of accountability is to encourage continuous improvement that focuses, on student level outcomes. So as we begin to think about this moving forward, the board is proposing, the proposals would bring together Utah's multiple accountability systems into one coherent system. So there are some components, and that's what we're discussing right now. Today we're going to discuss the components and what that might look like. The weights and the measures and all of that, the metrics have not been determined yet, okay? And we're going to get more stakeholder input on all of that. It'll be a process that will look at lots of data and really attempt to have some thoughtful discussion and thoughtful considerations around those kinds of things. So the components are, it says outcome-driven, school and quality success component. There'll be an academic performance component, academic growth, and equity. And so what do I mean by those things? Well, outcome-driven is we really want to define the ultimate outcome that should be privileged in the accountability system. So if we privilege mastery of the standards, that's what we want to focus on. If we want to privilege success on a test that goes toward college and career readiness, then that's what should be privileged in the accountability system. So that's one component that'll be important. School and quality and student success. This is a new indicator, and what it actually is a measure that goes beyond test scores and graduation rates. So as and I'll talk about this in just a minute. So it's a different indicator, such as chronic absenteeism or something like that. So I'll talk about that more in a minute. Academic performance is much like how we valued academic status in the last accountability system. We want information to the extent to which students meet the expectations defined in the state academic content standards. And we also value growth. We want to measure progress on academic performance, measures to indicate the rate at which students are developing their knowledge and skills toward an accomplishment of a desired outcome. And the fifth indicator is equity, and that is support of the success of potentially underserved students or students who are at risk of academic failure. So while in the past, I think we really focused on performance and growth, we're adding some other components to this to make a more well-rounded accountability system that meets state, federal, and what our governor has as his PACE metrics and report. So these are the accountability recommendations. So what I've done here is with elementary, which is grades 3 through 8, I've taken those components and said these are possible indicators, and this is how it would be measured. So first of all, outcome driven at the end of 3rd through 8th grade, the indicator would be who's on track for success in our secondary schools, and that metric has not yet been defined. That's something that we really want to think about and consider. For the component of school and quality or student success, we want students, the indicator would be access to those quality educational opportunities. Some of the metrics that have been discussed so far have been chronic absenteeism, teacher attendance, which there's a lot of research around, new research around teacher attendance, and student suspension. So we know that these don't come without some concerns, and we welcome any discussion and feedback around that as well. Academic performance would be performance on SAGE 3 through 8 and DIBELS at the end of grade 3. It would be proficient on SAGE and benchmark on DIBELS would be our metrics that we would think about around that. Academic growth, again, is performance on SAGE 4 through 8 and the DIBELS growth 1 through 3. So it would be growth on SAGE and growth on the DIBELS pathways to progress. And then lastly, equity and English proficiency. In this case, it would be the performance on the WIDA assessment for English learners, and we would be looking at growth toward English proficiency on that WIDA assessment. Okay, any questions about 3 through 8 and what we're thinking about there?
No.
No? Oh, pretty good, no questions. Hopefully I'm explaining it well enough. All right. And then let's talk about high school for just a minute. So the components for high school, again, thinking about our 5 components, the first one would be, the outcome would be being prepared for success after high school. That's college or career. The metric is 2 things, a score of at least 18 and high school graduation. For school quality and student success, these are some possible metrics that we've been thinking about. A score, the points would be awarded if a student earned at least one of the following, okay? A score of a 3 or more on an AP test and or increased access for all students at a school in those courses. A C or higher on a concurrent enrollment course and or increased access at the school level. Not sure, something on an IB course and or increased access for the entire student body to those IB courses. A CTE pathway completer or concentrator, passing a grade in an honors course, or receiving a 2.5 GPA in English Language Arts 11 or secondary math course, and or the last science course taken. So those are some of the quality indicators that we're thinking about moving forward. The academic performance would be performance on the ACT and ACT Aspire and the success on that. The growth would be from ACT Aspire to ACT. So the growth on ACT Aspire toward that end metric of college and career readiness. Then under equity and English proficiency, we would think about looking at a cohort of students who might be at off-track performance. You know, I know that many of your districts have thought about an early warning system. So this is sort of addressing those kids that would be flagged by an early warning system. Some of your districts already have early warning systems in place. I know the state's looking at how we could do an early warning system from this level. But it would be around dropout recovery, core course performance or improvements, credit recovery, lowering the absenteeism, reduced suspensions. And then again, we would also think about English proficiency here and looking at English learner progress. So that would be actually 2 different metrics. One would be the kids that are off track, looking at their improvements, and the other would be growth again on the WIDA assessment, and we're not sure what that looks like yet either at this point. So those are the indicators and metrics around the components of the accountability system that we're looking at and looking to get stakeholder feedback.
One comment.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems we need reading indicators at the 7th and 8th grade levels. I see lots of deterioration after 3rd grade.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So even though we have performance on the ELA and writing tests on the grades 3 through 8, maybe it's an additional look at just the ELA portion of that for different groups and different subgroups, perhaps. So very good comment. Thank you. Okay, so when we're thinking about tying this back into continuous improvement, what we really want to do is think about the use of available data to set goals at a school level. And one of the ways that we can help you with that at a state level is new and improved reporting. So we have had some of the assessment directors involved, and we'd like to get more of you involved in really thinking about taking all of our reporting in-house. So from either SAGE or Aspire or any of these other assessments that we give statewide, taking that reporting in-house and really customizing things that would be important for your schools to see. So it's really providing and putting some more resources around the data gateway to make it improved. So thinking about improving that, and then using the school improvement plan, really thinking about those data indicators that we can give you to help create, write, and set goals in your school improvement plan. And then, of course, those goals being tied to our state goals as well. So thinking about success for all of your students at all levels. So plan, implement, evaluate, improve, and that continuous school improvement is what we're thinking about here. So my hope would be, and I think that others here at the state would agree with me as well, is that we really want to make sure that the school improvement plan is useful and that it really can drive improvements out there in the field, and that's what we're hoping. All right, so these are some questions I have now for you as we move forward. And what I would like you to do is to contact your UOD representatives to provide any feedback, because your UOD representatives are going to be bringing your feedback to our Assessment and Accountability Policy Advisory Committee in a couple of weeks. So these are some questions that I'm throwing out there to all assessment directors. And right now, your contact or your people, I think Rob Averett from Granite is the UOD president with Sherry Hyder, and I'm not even sure if I have this all right. And I know Logan Toon is the past president. I will send out in an AD memo those contacts for you. So Julie, if you'd make me a note, and then you'll know who you can get the, this data to or your feedback to. So one of the questions is how closely, when you're looking at these components, how closely do they align with what characteristics you value about schools? And one of the things that I really want you to think about when I ask you this question is, at a local LEA level, you can collect tons of data, but the data that's required for the UTREX system is somewhat limited. So when we throw out these ideas that we have about these components, it's because we have to have some components that we measure across the state. So we have 9 different SIS systems, and UTREX only collects certain flags, and so we are somewhat limited based on what we collect from you that we're able to do, and you may be able to do more at your sites than we're able to do. So just keep that as in context. Is there an aspect of school success that is missing from our proposed components? Are there unintended consequences maybe that we haven't seen yet that you can see with these proposals? Which of these indicators should be incentivized? How should we consider our weighting? What goals are reasonable for post K12 success? And then disaggregated performance goals and reporting, and I should say and reporting. So one of the things that we've done in the past is we've reported by subgroup everything, but we haven't reported the subgroup and the goals for those subgroups. So there's a couple of different ways you can report and set goals for those. So if you would like to weigh in and give us any feedback on that, we would be really interested to hear from the field about that. So basically that's what I have for you on new trends and directions, I guess I should say, in assessment and accountability moving forward. Julie, are there any questions?
Who is the UOD representative for charter schools?
I'm not sure of that. I know that you can contact Jennifer Lambert. Steve Davis from
New Ames?
New Ames.
Yeah.
I'll get you Steve's on the he's on our committee, and so I can get you his information, or you could send your feedback to Jennifer Lambert as well. So hopefully, and I'll send you a list of these names so that you'll have those contact information. Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
No other questions yet.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to turn this time over to Julie Quinn, or no, Jared Wright. Jared, you can come and sit in the hot seat and talk a little bit about ACT testing.
Excellent.
And then just move it
Just
with the mouse
click
or up
over,
here.
either way, you're
Okay.
sharing over there, and your camera's right there.
Oh wow. Okay, a lot going on. Okay. All right. So I have some information about the ACT, some of the testing dates, as well as some information about the online testing. So we'll just go through. Actually, so something happened. I was noticing on the slides as they were transferred from what I did to this overall PowerPoint. So this slide should have this red box around the online testing window.
Did I mess it up?
Yeah.
Well, the accommodated one's important too.
That's important, and they're actually the same window, so
Sorry, that's my
maybe it
bad.
doesn't matter. Also, so just keep in mind as far as these dates, the top three bullets there, so the initial makeup and the second makeup test dates are all paper only, paper and pencil. And then you have the online testing window and then the accommodated testing window, which happen to be the same dates as well. Let's see if we can go through this. So some things to keep in mind. I've had several questions, and I've been trying to work with ACT to make sure we have this. They're changing things over now from last year to this year, and they've been incorporating new things. But this is what we have. So you can see there, November 7th is kind of a big date for things to start moving. You have where you can start managing testing coordinators and that type of thing in the PA Next system. You have accommodations can be entered or requested starting November 7th. You have online technical site readiness that will also start then that you could look at. We'll go through that a bit more in a minute. We're also wanting to provide some in-person training following the AD meeting in November. That would be November 17th. That would be in the afternoon, probably about 3 hours. There's also some Q&A sessions coming up as well. So just to keep in mind, those are some dates coming up, and we will provide more as we get more to get to you. So this is kind of an overview, very brief. As far as online testing, we're going to get into that. So there's 11 days of testing, so weekdays only, but it's important to note, and I think this was brought up with a question about Aspire, that ACT, once a student starts that day, they need to finish that same day. And so even though there's 11 days, it's not going to work like SAGE. So it's you might do different groups at a time, but a student can't start one day and finish up a few days down the road. It's also, I know there's a lot of iPads out there. They're not supported now. And again, you have an option to choose online or paper and pencil. It's not one or the other. Any questions so far?
Not yet.
Okay. So this is very brief, and there's a lot of information there, but the online testing includes 3 systems. So on the left, you can see the Pearson Access or the PA Next. This system will be used by anyone who is doing the ACT testing, online or paper pencil. It's where the students are managed, where all that information is input. You have the testing coordinators, the proctors, that type of thing. It's also where the online test administration is housed, so when you create test sessions, that's in the PA Next system. Then you have a test nav, which is the student, kind of like a secure browser relating it to Sage, but this is the student's, this is put on the student's computer to be able to take the test. Now there's 2 versions of this, and I'm still working with ACT to finalize why one system or one version of the test nav is recommended over the other. But you can see there's an installable app or there's a browser base, and the installable app is the one that's recommended. Not sure of the specific details as to why that's recommended over the other one. I'm thinking it's because of the ease of it. The browser base, it's only one specific browser, that Firefox ESR 45, and you also have Java that needs updating, whereas the other one doesn't have that. And then, so you have PA Next, you have TestNav, and then you have Proctor caching, which is similar to WIDA, if any of you are administering WIDA tests, Access 2.0, but this can be a concern because it creates sometimes an additional workload. But with ACT Online, it's mandatory, so you don't have a choice, though it doesn't have to be set up at each school. It can be district or regional center level, depending on how we want to work with that. And so there you can see some of the information. You also, I put the window of when you would need to go through the site readiness check. One thing to add, so that January 26th, if you said, hey, we want to do online testing, and in this PA Next system it says, yeah, this site is doing online testing, either you don't go through the site readiness check or you don't pass it, you don't have the technology needed, then January 26th at the end, ACT will just automatically switch you to paper and pencil.
So Jared, there's a couple of questions.
Sure.
And Guy just typed one that I was going to mention as well. So talk about the conversation at TCC, and then would you talk about the need for proctor caching and why it's required and why it's recommended at the school level?
Yeah. So so I did present some information at TCC, and we'll actually get to a little bit of that discussion. So let me jump to the second question first.
Well, yeah, so Guy's referencing, so the conversation at TCC, the IT directors were in no ways excited about moving to the online system for ACT. And part of that is the onerous nature of these technical, well, it's an onerous setup, right? Highly invasive, highly intensive at the school level. This is using Pearson's system, as you all see here on the screen. ACT subcontracts with Pearson to use their test delivery system. So the few of you that were still around, or that were around in the, 2006-ish time frame, Pearson's system is very similar to what we first used in the state for online testing with CRTs. This proctor caching requirement is highly inflexible from ACT's point of view because the student results are high stakes for kids. So since we haven't been able to outlaw backhost in the state of Utah yet, if you were to set up a proctor caching machine at the district level and your utility company cuts the line to your school, while you're administering the ACT to 11th graders, the students would lose what they have done so far and would have to start over again. Right. So even if they were, 2 hours and 40 minutes into taking the ACT, they would have to start over again. They cannot pick up where they left off. So it's pretty, it's a pretty big deal because of the nature of the results for ACT.
Right.
Yeah, a backhoe fade, right? A signal fade caused by a backhoe. Yeah, that's the technical term, Guy. So one of the reasons why you may want to consider using the ACT online system in some schools is that it's going to look very similar to the ACT Aspire online system that we are intending, as Joellen described, to procure beginning in 2018. So it would be helpful if someone in the state could give the ACT online this year so that we can see what we're looking at as we move forward with the procurement and implementation of ACT Aspire, because it's going to look very similar in the setup and the technical requirements. So any experience we gain with ACT Online will benefit that implementation going forward, which will not have a paper backup option. So we're still, as Joellen said, learning a lot about Aspire and whether or not the proctor caching is negotiable for the Aspire, whether the ACT. We're still very, very early in those discussions. But it's pretty invasive at the school level to do ACT online. So as Jared said, you can pick whether or not students are going to be online or paper. So you could have a small group of students in a school using ACT online, and the rest of them could be on paper. If there's something catastrophic that happens at a school site with the online, ACT is prepared to ship paper in a pretty quick turnaround. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty confident that there will be able to be a mechanism for kids to be assessed with the ACT. But yeah, as Jared talked about, the schedule is pretty set with ACT. There's not a lot of flexibility there. So if schools aren't certified by the end of January, they will be paper. Right.
Yeah, it'll be set up. Actually, so let's get to, so the next couple slides mention some of the things that are, if I can get it working right.
Click.
There we go. Just need to push harder. So these are some of the things that Julie's talking about that TCC, they were talking, and they had a very good point that technology should make things simpler and easier, whereas sometimes this actually may not do that. So one is the lockdown. So computers need to be locked down at least a week before the testing window begins. What this lockdown means is there's no updates being made. So students could still use the computers, but they wouldn't have updates being done to that until after testing. You also would need a tech coordinator. So if you do ACT on ACT paper pencil, you have a testing coordinator at the school, you have room supervisors. Now, in addition, you would need a tech coordinator to oversee that. They would also need those, as it says on the PowerPoint, they would need those permissions granted through the PA Next system. You would also have this early warning system, which is, this was kind of a big issue, and this is why they try and why they promote proctor caching, because ACT has these stringent guidelines as far as security reasons. If a student were to have some issues, which we all know there are issues when you put technology out there, if a student were to be testing and something happens to the computer and they're going to be available, we're trying to get things done, but if it wasn't able to be fixed within that day and the student couldn't finish their testing, the student would then have to, in order to get the score for ACT, they would have to go through start over, really. And that's extremely onerous, but that's more a policy decision for ACT. And that's why they have the proctor caching, to hopefully try and avoid that. But again, these are some things I just wanted you to keep in mind, that yes, there's some things that need to be done, and maybe you don't want to, or you do, or just think about it and how it would relate to your site. So here's some information. Here's where you can dig a little deeper on these into the tech requirements. I mean, I could have provided these, but I think it would be important for you to go into this a bit deeper and to see if this fits your site. We hear online, and some of us say, oh yeah, that'd be great, and some are a little nervous about it. And it's good to delve a little bit. And as Guy was mentioning, the discussion at TCC was a lot of them were nervous about how much this includes to try and get things going for just a few days of testing. Plus, it happens to be in a similar time frame as SAGE and other tests going on in the spring. That's all I have. So as far as questions or comments?
I'm looking, so question about being able to set the online at the school level or student level. Who's making that decision?
That would be the LEA.
No, it's the school.
Well, yeah. So you can decide how you want to do that. The LEAs need to work with the schools to decide whether they want the whole school to do one or the other, or whether they want to break that up within the school. But it's available per student.
Awesome. So I don't think there's any other comments on it. So I'm the disembodied voice over here in the corner. But I think it's important that assessment directors work closely with their IT directors, especially those of you who had representatives at the TCC meeting. That's the Technology Coordinators Council. It's kind of the semi-annual gathering of IT directors. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have someone represented there from your LEA, that might be something to look into too. But very good conversations in that group about the support needed and some of the concerns. So work together with your IT folks, start making the decision, take a look at the websites Jared's posted here to decide which schools and which students within your schools you're going to try and have take the ACT online for this school year. And then the training in November and those training dates that Jared had on those slides. Jared, you're going to go walk through soup to nuts all of this, right?
Yeah, we're going to go through as much detail. We're also, tomorrow I have a call with ACT. We're going to go through what we're going to include in those training sessions and get that to you so you know what's going to be presented and whether that's something you want to look at or not.
One other question, do you think there's a way to test the system with about 120 students before the test day? So part of that site certification is part of that load testing, right?
They do have practice tests, and they do have other, the test readiness that you can check. You can check as far as how many computers can be connected to the Proctor caching machine and all that type of stuff. But as I showed earlier, November 7th is when that becomes available. So I'm still working with ACT to see it for myself. So look for November 7th for those things to start moving.
Judging from the TCC meeting, there will be a high level of resistance from tech directors. Not even one indicated willingness to do online ACT. Of course, some were not in attendance, and some haven't been bribed sufficiently by their assessment counterparts. Yeah. So it might require an extra few orders of pizza and whatnot.
I would say the one thing there is make sure to talk with your IT people, because they do have the expertise, and sometimes as far as assessment, we go, oh yeah, it's online, it must be great and amazing and easier to do. And sometimes that's the case and sometimes it's not, but the IT folks have a good handle on how many people there are, the resources they have available. So make sure to work closely with them. And in your case, Guy, you're the same guy, so you can just have your own, talk to yourself.
Will the student prep piece, filling out the testing packet, also be done online?
Yes.
Yeah,
it will be.
Okay, any other ACT questions? more to come on the ACT
Yeah,
side of
it's
things.
just starting.
And, like I said, it's the same mechanics that ACT uses for Aspire. So away we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Who's up next? Wida?
Wida.
The lovely Sydney Carter is up next. Okay, your camera's in the middle.
Great.
Click on that screen over there to advance.
This one?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, here to talk about WIDA. So the first thing is you'll be receiving information from WIDA, an email regarding ordering testing materials. The test material ordering window opens the end of this month, so October 25th. You can see the dates on the screen for ordering materials. You do order your materials through DRC on the WIDA AMS website. If you're unfamiliar with how to order materials, there's a tutorial that the email that you get will walk you through how to order materials and where you go, but that's on the WIDA website, the training course. And on the tutorial, it does tell you some information about if you can skip some certain slides if you're not doing the pre-ID file. So in Utah, we do the pre-ID file at the state level, so those are slides that you can skip. You don't have to do the pre-ID file. So those are slides to skip on the tutorial. And even though we do the access test online, you still have to order materials for online tests and let them know how many online tests are taken. Part of the training course walks you through, even though first grade and second grade are paper, you note how many students you have at the different grade levels that will be taking the test, even if they're online, and that they'll automatically order materials for whether it's online or paper, depending on the grade level. And if you are new to the WIDA Access Test, if you didn't administer last year, or if you want a refresher, there are a couple of different trainings coming up. So the first one on November 14th, there are 2 half-day sessions, both in Salt Lake. The first one in the morning will be for test coordinators. Those will be for people at the district or charter level that are coordinating the test. So you're the ones who are ordering materials, managing test sessions, distributing materials. Any of that information would be a test coordinator. So you can see the course number and section to sign up on OnTrack for that section. And in the afternoon will be test administrators. So those are the people who are actually administering the test, how to log students in, the rules about how many students can be testing at a certain time in a certain room, any other information about test administration. Those sessions will be repeated on November 15th in Provo. So if you would rather do that in the Provo area, there are dates in Provo, which will be the same thing as the 14th. So you don't need to sign up for both. It is different information from morning to afternoon, but the 2 days are the same information being repeated. And then finally, there's one more professional learning opportunity. There's a formative language assessment workshop. It's a 2-day workshop on November 30th and December 1st. That'll be here at the Utah State Board of Education building. And this is for classroom teachers or English language teachers to focus on formative assessment and language acquisition using language development, understanding language development, and formative assessment hand in hand together. So if you have teachers or EL people that would be interested in this 2-day workshop, they can sign up on OnTrack, and you see the course number and section there. And I think that's all I have for now. Questions about WIDA?
Yes. When is the pre-ID file being uploaded? Is it going to be updated closer to the test window?
So our pre-ID file is due December 2nd. So it'll be about a month before, which most people get off of school in the end of December. So a couple of weeks of school before the window opens.
And that's about the same schedule as we had this
really
past
similar
year,
schedule
right?
to the last year, right? So December 2nd, our pre-ID file is due. You will be receiving your materials that you've ordered. Remember, the window opens on October 25th to order materials. You'll be receiving those materials on January 4th.
And you can distribute them so that people are ready to test on starting January 9th. Our window opens and goes until March 10th is the testing window.
Will the WIDA training only be offered in person, or will there be a webinar option?
For these trainings in particular, they're only in person. There are tutorials online that when you certify, you can walk through the tutorials, but these particular professional learning will just be in person.
Awesome. That's all. Oh, can someone come to the trainings if they don't have an account? And OnTrack, is there another way to register?
Oh yeah, if you don't have an account in OnTrack, will you send me an email? My name is spelled differently, so it's cydnee.carter@schools.utah.gov. So Sydney Carter, let me know and I'll make sure we have a space for you if you can't sign in on OnTrack.
And if I can type, there's your email. Okay, those are all the questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we are going to talk about a change to the calculator for SAGE. Todd, do we have you online? I'm trying to see. Okay, we may not have Todd online. So I'm going to do my very best to try and cover this change to the calculator for SAGE. And unfortunately, pretty much what I know about it is on the screen. So Todd Vaudry, our secondary math assessment specialist, has been running point on this. And we know that AIR intends to update the calculator in the SAGE system like this weekend. We did talk about it during the SAGE trainings, so there was a slide on what's new to the system, and we talked about this change to the calculator. And during the SAGE trainings, we indicated that the upgrade to the calculator would likely occur in October. And here we are on October 18th, and we're about to launch the change to the calculator. So this is a friendly heads up that this is coming. The calculator policy is the same as before. It's just that we have a new update to the calculator. So this is what it looks like. And it's also available to download. If you go to desmos.com, there's an app that can be downloaded so that students can improve their familiarity with it. So you can see it looks a little different. It's a little more modern than the prior calculators were. And then at the high school level, you've got some ability to have some more advanced capabilities with functions and graphs and things like that. So there's the change to the calculator. Any questions? I don't see any questions coming in on the calculator. So again, this is coming out. We just got word today that AIR intends to roll it out sometime between Thursday and Monday. So it's very timely to do that. Some of you are out of school this week. When you come back next week, you'll have a new calculator in the SAGE systems. Speaking of SAGE, looking at training going forward. So we are in the process of setting the training schedule for spring. Many of you participated in the SAGE trainings we held the end of August and the beginning of September. So we will be looking at some changes. There's a few minor tweaks to the system between what we've been doing mid-year summative and spring. We'll be running that through the Wednesday webinar we do on December 7th. And then we'll have an in-person training for new staff. So folks that have not participated in a SAGE administration or who struggled last spring with administering the assessments, or who just want a school board to provide one of these specifically for charter school administrators. So we're holding November 29th for that meeting here at the State Board of Education in the basement. Then we have envisioned a second version of this. So we've got the all-day training here. And then we're looking at providing a couple of half-day trainings, one specific to the data gateway. There's been a number of features added to the data gateway since we've done this last kind of all-day training on it. So a deep dive into all of the functionality. And then the second half-day offering would be this deep dive into the more of assessment to achievement strategies. So the identifying concerns, looking at instructional strategies, and trying to scale up some of those ideas. So we've got some dates set for those. We'll throw those into On Track and put them into an assessment director's memo as soon as we have them all structured that way. But again, we're very open to your feedback and suggestions and recommendations. We want to be able to provide supports that are useful to you and your schools. So let me know. Terry Southam is our new reporting specialist. She's actually out on a site visit for A to A today, or else we'd have her be presenting these slides. She comes to us from Endeavor Hall, where she was the assessment director for a number of years. She's very sensitive to the challenges charter schools face, but she's very well versed at the school level and with the reporting needs that you have and that we all have in the field. So Terry will be taking the point on this, supported by the rest of us and our staff. So let us know what would be useful to you. And I don't see any other questions, so I will give you back your chair.
All right, thank you very much. And that ends our assessment director meeting webinar for today. Our next meeting will be the third Thursday of November. Julie, can you give me a date on that?
Yes. Hang on. I know what it is. It's November 17th.
November 17th. It's not Thanksgiving. It's the Thursday before Thanksgiving. And we will have that meeting in on-site in Basement West. So appreciate all of you attending this today. And if there are no more questions, I think that's, are there any more, can you see any more questions there?
No, I don't see any more questions. We may have a problem with the recording, but we'll cross that bridge.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, and see you soon.